and I paid almost $1,000 to save him. He ate something he shouldn't have eaten. Oh, see, I would be like heartbroken. Something like that happened. Does it cost very much, Keely? Is it like really expensive? Is he going to have to go through like a risk review like humans have to? Like he's too high risk? I had so many people, though, say, it's just a cat. And I say, well, would you let your dog die? Then why would I just let my cat die? I like dogs. I can't have dogs. My kids are allergic. Especially Shy. All right. Showing only 56 people are logged in, and there's 80 or like 90 of you guys.
120.
I give you guys another minute or two to absolutely. Oh. He bought you the Yeller. Oh my gosh. Well, Sprinkles had a sore paw. Like I didn't know. She's like, how long's it been like that? I said, I don't know. Cats like protect their paws. Like they don't want you to touch them. So I hadn't really seen his paw. And then when I noticed it, it was red and there was like a sore spot on it. Hey, set that down. I'm getting ready to start.
Tell him I said hi.
Well, tell him yourself. Step over here and say hi.
Hello, classmates of Mom. How are you doing, Andrew? Good. Is this his legs? Are your
cast? Yeah, his legs in casts and his cat's shoes on. He gets new ones tomorrow.
There's so many people.
Yep. All right, get out. I'm gonna have to start.
I like his profile picture.
You like whose profile picture? Lucas's?
Lucas. Yeah.
Lucas, he likes your profile picture. Close the door. Love you too, buddy.
Tell him I said thank you.
I will tell him that if I bring him back in here, he'll never leave. So let's go ahead and get started. You guys see that?
No, not really.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Good. There isn't one exactly. There isn't one that asks about experimental versus non-experimental on the exam, but I wanted to make sure that you basically knew where to look to find what you needed to find.
What was your answer? Sorry. I went too far. I can't see with my glasses.
Oh, it won't let me go back. It was experimental, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it won't let me go back. Same one. What's the hypothesis? I gave you longer on these ones so you'd have a minute to read. It's not implicitly stated, but it is implied. Okay? There is a question on there on the exam about identifying what the hypothesis is in an abstract that I gave you. So let's see. What's the hypothesis? Well, that should be up here in this first part. And they wanted to investigate the clinical outcomes associated with the resection of duodenal SETs and to assess possible predictive factors. That's what they were looking at. So they were looking at investigating the clinical outcomes, but they didn't say like what they hypothesized was going to be impacted. So it's not clear. They didn't. Most research articles will say, yeah, I did zoom in more, so I'm not sure it's as big as I can get it. Most of them will say we hypothesized blah. This one did not, and sometimes they do not, and they will be not implicitly stated, but implied. Okay, so it says, what's the independent variable? It says they were developing and evaluating the back to balance program. In the conclusions, it says, we hypothesize that the program will lead to increased physical activity, healthy nutrition, so blah, 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 all those things. So these are what your dependent variables are, and you have multiple. And the program will lead to those things. So those things are dependent on the program. So that's why it's your independent variable. Mm-hmm. It is not clearly stated. Now, I think the title is not on there because I think it was clearly stated in the title. And that was an old question, so I don't remember what it exactly said. It does mention interviews. It doesn't mention anything about lived experience. It doesn't mention anything about processes that I saw. And I didn't see anything. Case study is generally just very, very few people, and it's something sort of an outlier type situation. Right, it did say interview, but that doesn't tell us what, because you can use interviews for all different types of qualitative studies. You can use it for a mixed method study too. So it's not clear. It doesn't exactly say. Now, my guess is that if you read the whole article, it's going to tell you. But this is not clear as to what exactly they did. Because interviews by itself doesn't give us an answer as to which qualitative method it is. Yep. Independent variable. Well, they were looking, the outcome was clinical and adverse effects. That were observed in poison patients, that's our population, that had received this particular sedative. Okay. They're not always ordered in the way that we think would make the most sense. All right. I gave you guys extra time to read those, but what I want you to keep in mind is that most abstracts go in a specific order. And this is kind of the order that they go in. So you shouldn't have to spend a really long time looking to find what it is that you need, because you should kind of have an idea of where it's at. So your hypotheses and your background and the purpose should be at the beginning. And then if it's asking other questions, those will be lower down. But try to have an idea of where you're looking. There's some that are kind of this long that are on the exam. So you're going to need to, you're not going to want to sit there and read the entire thing. Kind of know where you're going to be looking. This was in your city training. Good. You can't accept gifts from a research sponsor. You cannot, or you can conduct research on a technology that you manage, but you have to report that conflict of interest. Grant-funded outsourcing to your spouse's company? Nope. You can include college student interns in your research. So that is not conflict of interest in any way. It's nothing that you have to implicitly state for the world to hear. Okay. The consent, the part that's talking about participation and time commitment is procedures. It's talking about this is what we're going to have you do, and this is how long it's going to take. That is a procedure. All right. Compensation has to do with money. So that's, or whatever type of incentive they're giving you. Participation and time commitment is not risky. Now, if there are risks associated with it, that'll be in its own column or its own section. And then purpose, that's details about why you're doing it. It's not the purpose of doing it in the first place. Nick's killing it. Good. Red, blue, and green are all things that may be positive outcomes of a study. A lot of times when I do my research with the kids, I will give them or their parents a local listing of mental health providers or mental health resources. That's considered a benefit. If you are in some type of study that might result in weight loss, that would definitely be a benefit. Same thing with something, I mean, you could potentially have improved self-esteem if that's what the program is about trying to do. Compensation is not a benefit. I said that 100 times the other night. So anything that involves money is not a benefit. It is compensation. It goes in a different section. Now, you don't have to know the fact that it's in the Belmont report. You just need to know core ethical principles. Good. Beneficence, justice, autonomy, or respect for persons are all ethical principles. Scientific integrity is wonderful, but it is not an ethical principle. Look at you guys. Killing it. Okay. So respect for persons are things like autonomy. Okay. So informed consent is definitely respect for persons. Voluntariness, that's making the decision to be in a study, which is definitely autonomy and having a respect for that person's choice. Withdrawing from participation, that's having respect for their decision to withdraw. Benefits outweigh the risk, that's beneficence. That's always doing good. Okay. I did find out today that I have bronchitis, which is why this cough's not going away. Above all, do no harm. That is beneficence. Those of you who had me in 11:11 missed that. I'm going to have to strangle you. If they are unmarked and anonymous, the biggest ethical safeguard here is anonymity. Okay? That's why it's anonymous. I don't know what process consent is. I think I just put some random phrase in there. Informed consent is absolutely necessary with anybody and everybody except in very unusual cases. Just because you're being shady about how you're collecting your data doesn't mean that you can just imply consent. Okay, it's not that way. Verbal assent or written assent. So when I have the kids participate in my studies, I have them sign an assent. It's not called consent because it's with a minor, but it's called assent, meaning I don't want their parents to make them attend. I have the parents sign a consent, and if the parents say it's okay, then the kid can attend. If the kid says, no, I don't want to do it, then they don't have to. And that's what verbal assent is. A stipend is perfectly acceptable. Okay, it doesn't create an ethical dilemma unless we are exaggerating benefits or overly compensating somebody. It's perfectly okay to offer a stipend. There's not going to be any ethical dilemma if the IRB rejects the study proposal because the study isn't going to happen. So you're not going to be creating any dilemmas. And it doesn't have to be an ethical dilemma just because there are vulnerable subjects in it. However, when the participants' rights are somehow in conflict with needing to develop a strong study, that's when you get ethical dilemmas. Okay, the purpose, you absolutely have to say why you're doing that study. Risk and benefits, absolutely have to say that. The time commitment, yes. And I've submitted them before, and IRB have said, you got to put the time in there. And I'm like, literally, it's 5 minutes. Excuse me. But they make you put it in there. The only thing that isn't required is a statement of your clinical expertise. Good. Yep. Confidentiality. You can't just let anybody see your data, even if it doesn't have, even if it's de-identified. Mm. Oh my God, I gotta get that medicine. Good. Children also have the right to withdraw. Okay. What's the level of review? It was too long for me to put that question in there. Self-reported tools would be like surveys. I love that little boy's red hair. Okay. Because this is online and they are self-reporting, there's not an intervention happening here. We're probably not going to have any contact with them at all. The only exception would be if we decided that we needed to explain the tools to them, in which case, if we had like a live session with them that way. But that still probably wouldn't go beyond expedited. I had an expedited study for my dissertation, and I sat down one-on-one, face-to-face with adolescents telling me their stories of cyberbullying, and that was still expedited. Full board would be things like, if you're doing any type of intervention or program with a really kind of extremely vulnerable population, you know, children are vulnerable, but often not in the same way that like pregnant women are. So if there are a lot of variables involved, or a lot of things that pose more than very, very minimal risk, like with the cyberbully kids, the risk was like maybe a little bit of distress if they got upset telling me about their story. So it was expedited because of that. You know, I participated in a study where they did lab testing and took a piece of muscle out of my leg. That would be a full board review. Yeah, evidence-based practice projects are usually exempt. Sometimes random online surveys can be exempt, depending on how you've written them. Going out and saying that you are going to observe college students, like if I'm going to go out and count how many of you wear leggings, that would probably be exempt, because you don't even know what I'm doing and it's not hurting anybody at all. I'm simply sitting there counting. That would be something that would be exempt. Evidence-based practice projects, if they are supported heavily by evidence, there should be essentially no risk. So a lot of times they can be exempt. I will tell you though, if you ever click that you're doing research with prisoners, it's not ever going to be expedited. It's always going to be a full board review. And those take weeks because they don't meet every day. Full boards do not.
No, you need a cough drop, don't you?
I have some, but I can't. Cough drops and my Diet Mountain Dew do not go well together. I called the doctor today. She ordered some steroid pack. She some and laying down in the bronchioles. Okay. That was pretty good. Small homogeneous sample. Well, if I am doing a very small subset of people who are exactly the same, that's going to mean that I can't generalize, right? Y'all agree?
Yes.
That has generalization is not internal validity, it's external validity. Confounding variables, I didn't say that up here anywhere. Could and confounding variables don't normally impact instrument validity. Measurement bias, that's generally related to the instruments that we're using. But selection bias, choosing a very specific population or very small, very lack of diverse population, that's going to not make it easy to generalize, which is external validity. There are, I think, 2 questions on the exam like that. These Luden's dual relief things taste pretty good. As far as cough drops go. All right. Compensation doesn't generally have anything to do with deception, because if we say we're going to compensate somebody and we don't, that's like a major thing. So if we say we're going to compensate, we have to compensate. Compensation is not a benefit. So we shouldn't be exaggerating benefits if we're talking about compensation, because compensation and benefits do not go together. And then voluntariness. If we give somebody a bunch of money, or somebody, even like if I were to give the kids in my study $50 as opposed to 10 or 15, or this last one I had grant funds, so I was able to give them 20, but I wouldn't give them much more than 25. Because, I mean, think about it, $50 when you're in middle school, that's a lot of freaking money. So they're going to participate whether they want to or not. If you give money or housing to a homeless person, aren't they going to be more likely to participate? We want to offer those things to them without kind of coercing them to participate. So anytime you're giving too much compensation, or you're not thinking about what population of people am I giving this compensation? If you give me $50, I think $50 is a big deal. But I probably am not going to do something that I don't want to do for $50. But if you're homeless or in a really bad situation, you need food for your family, you're going to do it because you need that $50. So it may affect voluntariness. Remember, I talked about this. I talked about the popular kid. Okay, most of you got it. So technically, this word's not on the exam because I know I didn't teach you this word, but technically that person is called a change agent. But I talk to you about them as a gatekeeper, the person that allows good or bad stuff to come into the group or the community, and that diffusion of innovations. We talked about that theory, right? What did we talk about being based on the theory of diffusion of innovations? It's right on a slide in the last presentation I did.
Iowa model.
There you go. Good job, Veronica. Is that you? Good job. Diffusion of innovations. I talked about a gatekeeper, but it's actually called a change agent. That's the person that's like the popular kid, that if the popular kid doesn't go along with it, it's not going to diffuse as well or as rapidly. Diffuse meaning spread the use of something. Like, how did iPhones become such a big thing? Well, because people started using them, the cool people, because I was going to say they cost a lot of money. Now they cost more than they used to. That's because they're more advanced, but it's spreading that. The difference between a stakeholder and a gatekeeper. A stakeholder is somebody that has a vested interest. So, you know, the popular kid in the group is the one that's going to get all the other kids to come and participate in my program. Stakeholders of my program are going to be the kids themselves, their parents, their teachers, anyone else that they interact with that are going to have behavior affected by the program that I'm implementing. Okay, so a stakeholder is like someone that has a vested interest in it. The gatekeeper is the person that chooses to allow or not allow that to come in to their space. The use of EBP models is definitely on this exam. EBP models, when do we use them? Well, they guide implementation. They identify who the change agents or gatekeepers are. That's part of the model. They evaluate change. They do not determine patient preference. We consider patient preference, but that's the thing. It's consider patient preference, not determine it. Patient preference is determined by the patient, right? So make sure you're processing. I know it's Kahoot, it's a little quicker. Make sure you're processing the words that you see, okay? Because I know what you were thinking. You were thinking considering, but considering and determining is different. And by the way, for the levels of the IRB review, I think it's in there as a stream video, but I posted it in your Blackboard. And it's a little video from the OU compliance office. It's not very long, 6 minutes or something, that talks about levels of IRB review. It was also in your city training. Y'all had best know the answer to this. It's been since day one. Good. Yep. Obviously, being cost effective is great. Increasing patient satisfaction is great. Improved patient outcome is the primary goal of evidence-based practice. Did you guys, you're kicking some butt. Andrew came in when I was creating this earlier and asked me if I was going to add pictures, so I made sure to put pictures in there. Yep. The significance is your background. Usually it's called your background / significance, okay? That's like where you put your statistics of why this thing is a problem and what's the significance of your study, of you doing the study, not of the findings, okay? So if I tell you to go in and tell me whether or not something was statistically significant, that's not under the significance in a manuscript, okay? It should be under the methods. You're going to have data analysis, data collection, sample setting, all of that is under methods. Tammy, that cough drop was good advice. It worked.
That's why I'm here, Mel.
These ones are really good. These are like a cough and a lozenge, so they actually taste pretty good.
All Ludens are good.
Yeah, I meant to just get the throat drops, but that's not what I got. Okay. Yeah, statement of IRB approval is not in the abstract. I've never, ever, ever seen one. It would be the weirdest thing ever if it was. Wait. Oh, gosh, guys, I'm sorry. I screwed up your scores because blue and green are right. That's my bad. I'm sorry. Study purpose and a summary of the findings are in the abstract. A statement of IRB approval is not in the abstract, and the limitations are not. So if I messed up anybody's score, I'm sorry. There are multiple questions on qualitative article and trustworthiness, and on the strength of quantitative studies and validity and all of those words that go along with that. Okay. So there are multiple questions on this. So get into that qualitative and quantitative appraisal PowerPoint and review those terms and make sure you know what they mean. So trustworthiness, ding, ding, is qualitative. Generalizability, internal validity, and reliability are all quantitative. The only one that's on here that's qualitative is credibility. There's another one. Transferability in qual is what in quant? Is it or is it not? Yeah. So generalizability with quant means that we can take our findings and hopefully put it out to other people in a similar situation and it will work like we want it to. Qualitative, we can't always do that. So we call it transferability, but it's the generalizability of qualitative. It's about the best that you can get as far as generalizing in qualitative research, okay? These are all of this is on those slides, okay? On the qualitative appraisal, it tells you this approximates to blank in quantitative. So those answers are there. You've got to go in and look and find them and know them for the exam. There are multiple questions on those criteria. Probably three on qual and 2 or 3 on quant. So it's a good chunk. This is another one, trustworthiness and what it means. Consistent and repeatable in qual is dependability. We do look at credibility and confirmability. Confirmability is more like objectivity, and then credibility is, I think that's where you're member checking and all of that. Is it strong enough for us to say that the findings are credible? Reliability, again, is quant. So it doesn't apply. And that's one quick way to rule out probably 1 or 2 answers is, am I asking for quant or qual? Now we're talking quant. Dependability and confirmability are both qual. So those should have been ruled out immediately. Looking at whether or not it is appropriate for a very specific population is it applicable? So with the quantitative, there are really only three big terms that you need to know. It's reliability, applicability, and validity. And applicability is it going to, if I'm going to go in and say, is this appropriate for my population of patients that I treat? I'm looking for, is it applicable? Does it matter anything to me? Someone asked about confirmability. I'll get there in a second. Pregnant women are like the cutest little things with their little basketball bellies. Yes, they are a vulnerable population, always. And part of that is because of the fact that they're a pregnant woman, but usually a bigger part of that is the fact that they have this child that is growing inside them that is very vulnerable to nearly everything is going to impact that child in one way or another. So that's what makes them so heavily vulnerable. You can't even take anything more than like Tylenol when you're pregnant. So you guys are taking your time. Some of you guys are like, what are we going to answer for this? Yay! Oh, I'm glad some of you love me. You big liars. I'm just teasing. Yes, please do your best. We want to see you guys do well. I posted the outline. Mrs. Moore, I posted it in your class too. I hope that's okay. I wanted to make sure that they all had it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you.
For sure. To answer confirmability, so that is remember when I talked about like giving that rich data, like that rich description and qualitative, where you really need to describe the themes and the categories that you're talking about. So confirmability approximates objectivity, meaning you have given me enough description and you have substantiated what you found well enough for me to be able to look at it and see the same thing and see that it just wasn't your opinion, that that's truly what came out of the data. So can I confirm? Can you read what I wrote and confirm? Yeah, that's what I see what she's saying. So that's confirmability. But again, those start like on, let me see, slide 19 of the qualitative. It's in an announcement and it's at the bottom of the announcement underneath the link to tonight's class. It says exam outline, exam 3 outline or something like that. And if it'll let you open it, there it is in the chat. But it should have went to your email. So just real quickly, let me open that real quick. So it's got, you guys see that? So quantitative appraisal, validity, reliability, and applicability, okay? There are multiple questions on this for quant and qual. Make sure that the very first thing you look at when you read that question is she asking me for terminology related to quant or to qual? Because if it's quant, you can immediately rule out 4. If it's qual, then you can immediately rule out 3, okay? Those are both straight from the PowerPoint. It should be in your book too, but definitely in the PowerPoint. Ethical considerations. Again, every bit of this, the ethical stuff, is in multiple places. If it wasn't in your book, it's in the PowerPoint, and it was probably in city training. If it wasn't in one place, it was in 3 other places, which is why you have the short videos. There's multiple short videos. There's the PowerPoint, there's the book, and there's your city training. So those are not going to be like, I'm going to argue this because they're in multiple places. They're all over the place. You just have to go in. These are the ones that are potentially on there. So make sure that you know these ones. Tammy, do you have something to say?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I looked at it. No. Well, I didn't think I did.
And vulnerable, I don't know why I have that there kind of under ethical concerns where it is, probably should be pulled out and left the line there. But vulnerable populations. What did city training tell you were vulnerable populations? That's also in multiple other places. What are considered vulnerable populations, okay? Children, pregnant women, prisoners, sometimes the elderly. You know, if it's elderly at a senior citizen that you're doing something positive for, they're probably not going to be considered vulnerable. But in a nursing home where they're bedridden, absolutely they are. Compensation is not a benefit, okay? I've said that a million times, so I can guarantee you that is on there somewhere. Remember that. Barriers to EBP, that's something we've talked about from the beginning. We've talked about barriers and we've talked about facilitators. So it's also on the change model PowerPoint. It's in there. We talked about the reasons why evidence-based practice is hard to implement. Those are your barriers. And then change models. I believe there are 3 questions, and I believe there is one on each of the 3 that are under here. Okay? You do not need to memorize the steps of the Iowa model. I told you that. I would review like the basis for the Iowa model, commonalities that are within all change models. Sounds like a select all that apply to me. And then the benefits of change models, which could also be a select all that apply. I don't remember. But all 3 of those things are on the exam. I'm pretty sure every single word that's on here, or every single category thing I listed, with the exception of maybe one word I don't remember like specifically typing, but they're all on there. So these are the things you need to know. I wrote this as I was going through the exam questions. So yeah, anyone have any questions? So it's Monday, and it is 30 questions. Yeah, same rules as before. Everything's the same. So I'm done if you guys don't have any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Maggie, it's probably going to be 45 or 50 minutes. I may give you another minute or 2 because some of them have like a PDF, 1 page of an abstract or something like that. So you may need a minute or 2. It'll start at 6, Molly, so that people have time to, people who aren't at home can get somewhere to test. Welcome,
Thank
guys.
you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks.